free not only to consolidate this authoritarian power, which has been on display for the last 6 months, but he's going to pursue that third term that he has warned us about. You know, before the election, I will be a dictator on day one. Before the election, this is the last vote you'll ever have to take. Before the election, we saw what happened the last time he was, democratically and fairly voted out of office. He literally tried to incite an insurrection to stop that from happening. So this really may be our last best chance at saving the country, and it runs right through Texas.
So you really believe, because this is a philosophical fissure. So there's two sides to this.
Yeah.
Side number one is we're at war. Fascism is now here. The rule book is gone.
Yeah.
We need to regain control of the wheel. So that's one.
Yes.
There's a second part of it, which is there is a rules-based order. And even if they are breaking the rules, there has to be a backstop where the rule book just doesn't go out the window. And you're saying we're in the former, we're in the first.
Absolutely. And again, to be clear, this is legal. Okay. This is within the current rules. You can redistrict mid-decade. It's unprecedented. But I'm sick of Democrats being like, this is totally unprecedented. No other president's done this shit before. People like hearing that. They don't like the system that works. The status quo is broken. It's fucked them over. So when they give Trump that credit, you were saying this earlier about Ken Paxton, like this may be, boosting his appeal to say that he's been indicted twice, under active FBI investigation, impeached. The current system isn't working. So, Trump gets that. He's identified that problem. His solution sucks. It's terrible for America. It's going to end the republic. And it's just really bad for our friends and our neighbors and our family members. We have to also identify that the system sucks, isn't working, hasn't worked for you for a long time, and be just as bold and radical, but for the good of this country, to restore the checks and balances, the laws that have been broken, the Constitution that has been shredded right before our eyes. If we're not willing to play hardball right now, it is over. I just read this fascinating story about how it took Hitler 53 days after he was named chancellor in January of 1933 to consolidate power. In those 53 days, turn after turn after turn, the opposition party could have done something and they didn't do it. The president of the republic, the Weimar Republic, could have done something. He didn't do it. Business interests could have done something. They didn't do it. The press could have done more. They didn't do it. And in 53 days, boom, it's over. And it was over for the long term, until Hitler was dead and the Allies won the war. I don't know if I'm saying that that's going to happen in America, but this moment sure as hell rhymes with the 1930s. And if we don't pay attention, we're going to lose it.
This episode of Hassan Minhaj Doesn't Know is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.yeah. No matter how large, small, or demanding your family is, Booking.com will help you find the perfect place to stay. You'll have your pick of millions of vacation rentals and hotels across the United States of America. I am on record saying my parents are welcome to live with me, eventually. But unfortunately, they thought that meant joining us on vacations now. So my family is looking for options with an in-law suite for mom and dad. Also on our list, a backyard. My kids love the space to play, but mostly we can't trust them with ice cream inside. Finally, it needs to be pet friendly. My daughter's bunny Maximo wants to see the world and find himself. Yeah, I know it's a lot, but I'll compromise on the kitchen. Let's be real, your boy can barely operate a microwave. And if our particular family can find our perfect stay on Booking.com, anyone can. Find exactly what you're booking for, Booking.com, Booking.yeah. Book today on the site or in the app.
One thing that I don't understand, and I'd love for you to help me understand, is this. Texas is probably the hardest state to vote in the United States of America. And Beto, that means the bar is pretty goddamn low.
Yeah.
I literally had to write this down. I cannot believe that this is real. There literally is no online voter registration. You have to print it out, put a stamp on it, mail it, and then it has to get there at least 40 days before the election. So essentially, you have eliminated every single voter under the age of 30. Why?
Because they don't want voters under the age of 30 participating in the election, because those Republicans fear that they'll lose that power.
How did we get here? You have also served in office in Texas. Why is it like this? And why hasn't it changed?
You know,
irrespective of
right.
of who's in power.
Yeah. Again, this is human nature. Those in power, whatever their party affiliation, will try to stay in power, and they'll use every means at their disposal. One of the great geniuses of America was John Lewis, who recognized that we didn't live in a democracy, protested, fought, forced President Johnson in 1965 to use his political power to pass the Voting Rights Act in 1965. That set the rules of the road to prevent exactly what we are seeing take place in Texas right now. You couldn't do this shit because the Department of Justice, after the Voting Rights Act was passed in 65, would jump on your case and they'd readjust these gerrymandered districts. They would allow for online voting if it had existed back in the 1960s or 1970s. So everything was working more or less pretty well until in 2013, the
Shelby
Supreme
County v.
Court,
Holder, right?
Absolutely, in their infinite wisdom, said, you know what? I just don't think we have a problem with people in power choosing their own voters anymore. And we don't have the problem of those people in power targeting black voters and minority voters to disperse them, to reduce the impact of their voting power, to cause them not to vote at all, which is happening in Texas right now. You know, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, in this scorching dissent, she says, you know, that's like, you've got this umbrella that has protected you from this rainstorm for a very long time. And because it's protected you for so long, your logic concludes that it's now time to put the umbrella away, even though it is still raining. And in the 12 years since then, I mean, we've just gotten soaked, not just in Texas, but Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, all these places that have concocted new regulations, closed thousands of polling places, put in new forms of voter ID. In Texas, you can't use your student ID at the University of Texas at Austin to prove who you are at the polling place, but you can use your license to carry a firearm to do the same. Again, very clear who they want to vote and who they do not want to vote in our elections. And the impact has been absolutely devastating. Millions of people otherwise eligible, not participating in our democracy.
I mean, Harris County has 5 million voters, one drop box.
One drop box, and that rule, that law was imposed by the governor and the state legislature in the middle of COVID, a pandemic that killed more Americans than any previous pandemic, concentrated in urban centers like Harris County, and they wanted everyone to go to the same one drop-off location in a county of 5 million people.
Let's talk about another hot button topic, guns. I want to play a clip of you in 2019. Let's take a look.
Hell yes, we're going to take your AR-15, your AK-47. We're not going to allow it to be used against